Most men go through life wandering in circles, not even realizing it. They wake up every morning convinced that the key to their happiness lies in the hands of women. They work longer hours, buy nicer clothes, upgrade their cars, and fill their schedules with efforts meant to attract love, validation, and approval. Deep down, they believe that if they give enough, sacrifice enough, or simply prove themselves worthy enough, they'll finally be chosen. Yet the cruel pattern repeats itself. They end up disappointed, abandoned, or drained. Instead of finding fulfillment, they find heartbreak. Instead of love, they find indifference. And the older they get, the more the question gnaws at them, why does this keep happening? 2 centuries ago, a German philosopher named Arthur Schopenhauer laid bare the brutal answer. Unlike most thinkers of his time, Schopenhauer didn't try to dress human relationships in poetry or illusions. He stripped them down to their raw, biological essence. He didn't write about women in the way romantics did, painting them as goddesses or muses. He wrote about them the way a surgeon might describe a disease clinically, clearly, and without apology. His words still strike nerves today because they speak to a reality most men instinctively feel but desperately avoid. Schopenhauer's view was simple yet devastating. Love, he said, isn't a divine bond. It isn't destiny. It isn't 2 souls finding each other across the vastness of the universe. Love is nothing more than nature's trick, a biological con game designed to ensure reproduction. The electric rush you feel when you see a woman you can't stop thinking about. The obsessive desire that convinces you she's the one. The flood of chemicals that hijacks your mind. That isn't her essence reaching out to your soul. It's your biology doing silent arithmetic. Subconsciously, you're weighing fertility, health, compatibility, survival potential. Your brain is calculating offspring, not romance. And women, Schopenhauer argued, are running their own version of the same program, though with different settings. While a man might be drawn primarily to youth, beauty, and fertility cues, a woman is tuned to look for strength, stability, and status. In other words, she isn't scanning for your kindness or loyalty. She's reading your ability to survive and provide, your potential to pass her children into the next generation. Schopenhauer put it bluntly: women are rarely guided by reason. They are ruled by instinct and emotion. It's a brutal perspective, and it explains why love so often feels like betrayal. If love is really just biology in disguise, then of course it vanishes the moment it serves its purpose. How many men have given everything to a woman, only to be discarded once she lost interest? How many marriages collapse once the initial fire burns out? How many men have destroyed themselves trying to win back a woman who walked away without looking back? Schopenhauer would say none of this is random. It is built into the system. That's why he called love a trap. It feels like the most important thing in the world when you're inside it, but once the moment passes, it leaves you emptier than before. The poet will tell you love is eternal. Schopenhauer will tell you it's a temporary illusion, a fever dream orchestrated by nature to keep the species alive. And this is where most men lose. Because they never realize the game being played, they keep operating under a fantasy. They think women fall in love the way men do, through effort, loyalty, and devotion. They believe that if they work hard enough to be good guys, eventually women will reward them. But biology doesn't care about effort. A man's devotion means nothing if he doesn't also provide status, security, or strength. Look at the world around you. On dating apps, the top fraction of men attract the majority of female attention, while the rest compete for scraps. In divorce courts, men who sacrificed everything for their families often walk away financially ruined. In history, entire kingdoms have crumbled because a ruler gambled his power for a woman's affection. The pattern doesn't change because biology doesn't change. But here's the dangerous part. When men hear this truth, they often interpret it as an attack on women. They call it unfair, cruel, or misogynistic. Yet Schopenhauer never saw it that way. He wasn't blaming women. He was describing nature. He understood that women aren't choosing selfishly. They're choosing instinctively. Their selectiveness is what kept humanity alive. That means the solution isn't to hate women. It's to understand the rules. If you play the game blind, you'll keep losing. If you see the game clearly, you can start making choices from a position of strength. Schopenhauer warned of what he called the tragedy of possession. The excitement of love, he said, lies not in the having, but in the chasing. Once a woman secures the man she wants, the biological incentive shifts. The conquest is complete, and the fire that once burned uncontrollably begins to fade. That's why men who obsess over their partners, who cling too tightly, or who make women the center of their lives so often get abandoned. They smother the very flame they're trying to preserve. The nice guy isn't punished because he's unworthy. He's punished because he misunderstands the dynamic. He believes devotion should be rewarded. He believes women want service and sacrifice. But instinct isn't drawn to servitude. Instinct is drawn to power. Women are attracted not to men who beg for their loyalty, but to men who don't need it. Schopenhauer saw another layer to this game that men still miss. Women, he wrote, wield their power differently than men. Men tend to fight with strength, with competition, with direct confrontation. Women fight with perception, with emotional influence, with subtle manipulation. Their greatest weapon isn't physical force. It's psychological leverage. They know how to cry to deflect accountability, how to withhold affection to test loyalty, how to create jealousy to gauge value. And men, unaware of these unspoken tests, fail them constantly. He called this dynamic the tyranny of the weak. Outward vulnerability becomes a hidden source of control. A man who doesn't recognize it becomes enslaved. A man who does becomes free. And that's the point most men miss. Freedom doesn't come from winning over women. It comes from understanding the system well enough to stop being controlled by it. That's why Schopenhauer's writings still matter. They cut through the fantasy and put the responsibility back where it belongs. Not on women, but on men. If love is an illusion, if attraction is instinct, if biology holds the cards, then what is a man supposed to do? The weak answer is to resent women, to complain that the system is unfair. The strong answer is to adapt, to stop playing the game as a desperate participant and start approaching it with awareness. The truth, Schopenhauer believed, is that women will always be drawn to men of higher value. That's not cruelty, it's programming. The tragedy is that most men never realize this. They live their entire lives begging for affection, hoping that service will translate into desire and wondering why they are endlessly disappointed. The moment you make a woman your purpose, you lose her respect. The moment you place her above your own mission, you lower your value in her eyes. The solution isn't to avoid women, nor is it to despise them. The solution is to build yourself into the kind of man who doesn't need them for validation, to focus so intently on your own path that her presence becomes a bonus, not the prize itself. And this is where Schopenhauer's philosophy turns from harsh critique into liberating advice. Because once you see love for what it is, not a fairy tale, but a negotiation, you stop walking into traps. You stop wasting energy on fantasies. You begin to build a life where you're no longer begging to be chosen. Instead, you're choosing. Schopenhauer believed the most dangerous illusions were not the ones told by women, but the ones men told themselves. A man convinces himself that if he just works harder, if he just proves his devotion, if he just shows how good his heart is, then she will stay. He convinces himself that love is a reward for sacrifice, that loyalty will buy loyalty, that romance will conquer biology. Yet reality proves him wrong again and again. Why? Because instinct doesn't reward effort. It rewards value. Women are programmed to seek the best man available to them, and that definition of best has very little to do with fairness. If a man stagnates, she will resent him. If he declines, she will replace him. This isn't malice. It's survival strategy. A woman who clings to a man who can't provide security is putting herself and her children at risk. Modern society tells men this truth no longer applies. We hear slogans about equality, about shared responsibilities, about love being unconditional. Yet look closer. The same biological patterns that ruled thousands of years ago still rule today. Dating apps are laboratories of human instinct. Women swarm around the men with the highest status signals while ignoring the majority. Divorce statistics reveal the same brutal calculation. The moment passion fades or provision falters, loyalty evaporates. Schopenhauer saw all of this centuries before Tinder or Instagram existed. He argued that women by nature are more childlike, more present-focused, and more guided by immediate emotion than men. He didn't say this to insult them, but to explain their role in nature. Their strength wasn't in long-term rationality, but in instinctive selection. They weren't designed to carry empires on their shoulders. They were designed to choose the men who could. And here lies the paradox every man must face. A woman's value peaks early during her youth, when fertility and beauty are most evident. A man's value, on the other hand, must be built over time through struggle, success, and status. By the time a man reaches his true prime, he has already suffered through years of rejection, doubt, and trial. By then, he either emerges strong or he remains broken. This is why modern men feel trapped. They are told to be vulnerable, to open up, to be sensitive. Yet the men who do this quickly discover that vulnerability is not attractive. They are told to abandon traditional masculinity, but the women they desire still chase men who embody dominance. They work themselves into exhaustion for careers and mortgages, only to realize their devotion is rewarded not with love, but with divorce settlements and child support obligations. Schopenhauer's words echo in this chaos. Women are instinctively crafty, adapted not to brute force but to subtle influence. What looks like sweetness can conceal manipulation. What feels like compassion can be a test. He understood that women had developed psychological tools to navigate a world where they lacked physical strength. Instead of demanding, they suggest. Instead of commanding, they persuade. Instead of confronting directly, they reframe the situation until the man believes it was his idea all along. A man who cannot see this becomes a victim. He confuses attention with genuine desire. He mistakes compliance tests for kindness. He thinks that if he just gives in one more time, sacrifices one more dream, bends his will a little further, he will finally earn her love. But Schopenhauer would say he has already lost. Because women are not attracted to men who need them. They are attracted to men who don't. The paradox is cruel, but consistent. The moment you make a woman your mission, she loses respect for you. The man who clings is discarded. The man who stands firm, who holds his frame, who treats love as a compliment rather than a necessity, is the one who commands loyalty. Schopenhauer called this dynamic the tyranny of the weak. Women often appear fragile, and men, out of instinct or conditioning, rush to protect and serve. But this perceived weakness becomes leverage, a tear at the right moment, a withdrawal of affection, a casual flirtation with another man. Each of these can control the stronger opponent more effectively than any physical force. To the untrained eye, she seems powerless. To the wise, it is clear she holds the strings. The escape from this trap is not to dominate women, nor to despise them. The escape is to recognize the biology behind the behavior. Once a man sees that it isn't personal, he stops reacting emotionally. He stops begging for fairness. He stops bargaining with devotion. Instead, he builds himself into the kind of man who doesn't need external validation to feel complete. Schopenhauer wrote that the happiness we create for ourselves is far greater than the happiness we receive from others. That is the core of his message. Men who center their lives around women are doomed to disappointment because they are chasing a source of fulfillment that can never be stable. But men who center their lives around purpose, whether art, invention, philosophy, or mastery, become unstoppable. They become the very men women chase, not because they beg for attention, but because they radiate strength. History proves this. The greatest artists, the fiercest warriors, the most visionary inventors, none of them wasted their lives orbiting around women. Women may have been part of their story, but never the centerpiece. Their energy was too consumed by creation, conquest, or discovery. And ironically, this made them irresistible. The man too busy building an empire has no time to grovel, and therefore he is desired. Schopenhauer believed 3 pillars formed the foundation of a powerful man's life. The first was economic independence. Money, he argued, is not valuable for what it buys, but for the freedom it secures. A man who depends on others financially is already enslaved. A man who controls his resources controls his fate. The second was intellectual depth. Most men, he observed, drift through life on borrowed ideas. They repeat clichés, absorb cultural lies, and never think for themselves. But the exceptional man sharpens his mind. He studies philosophy, history, and science. He questions what others accept blindly. He develops the clarity to cut through illusions. The third was physical mastery. The body, Schopenhauer knew, was not just a shell, it was the vessel of will. Weakness in the body breeds weakness everywhere. A man who neglects his health, his strength, his discipline, soon finds his spirit broken as well. But a man who commands his body commands his destiny. And underpinning all of this was Schopenhauer's most radical insight. That happiness itself is a trap. He warned that expecting too much from life leads to misery. The safest way not to be deeply unhappy, he said, is to lower expectations of bliss. This was not pessimism, it was armor. When a man no longer expects the world to hand him joy, he stops being manipulated by promises of it. He becomes immune to the illusions of romance, the lies of society, the false hope of external approval. In this sense, Schopenhauer's philosophy is not about despair. It is about liberation. The man who stops needing constant validation, who stops chasing the mirage of perfect love, suddenly finds that these things begin to flow to him naturally. Women respect him because he does not beg. Society cannot break him because he does not depend on it. He becomes, in every sense, the prize. The conflict between men and women, then, is not truly personal. It is not a war of hatred or cruelty. It is a biological theater, repeating the same ancient patterns generation after generation. The man who sleeps through this play gets used, drained, and discarded. The man who wakes up learns to write his own script. Schopenhauer's final lesson was simple but profound. Most people waste their lives trying to fit in, to be like others, to win approval from the crowd. But the man who dares to step aside, to embrace truth instead of illusion, to cultivate his own strength, becomes unshakable. He sees women clearly, but he does not hate them. He sees the world clearly, but he does not despair. He builds a life so strong that nothing outside of him can ever break it. And that is the choice every man faces. Continue chasing illusions or step into reality. Continue begging for affection or build a life so rich that affection comes as a byproduct. Continue being controlled by instincts you do not understand or rise above them. Schopenhauer's wisdom is not easy to hear. It is sharp, it is uncomfortable. It is offensive to those who cling to fairy tales. But for the man who can bear it, it offers something priceless: freedom. The freedom to stop being a pawn in nature's game and start becoming the master of your own life. The question is not whether women will change. They will not. The question is whether you will.